And that brings us to our more advanced hip hinge assessment. So the first thing, we would go to the hip hinge assessment for two reasons. One, there was pain, discomfort in the movement. Okay, so they're going in their hinge and they're like, I feel my back. I feel my hammies. Right? Then we need a little more info. Or if they can't get their hands to this part without rounding. Okay, if they're flexing through the spine before they get their hands to kneecap level, then we want more information. And we make it as simple as we possibly can. All right, what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a band pulling the dowel away from the body. This would be R&T training. And the reflexive or the reactive component of what's happening when I add the anterior line of pull here. It doesn't have to be hard, it's just a little bit. I need to keep this close. When I do this, if I don't contract lats into abs, which also kind of like spiral around and get glutes a little bit as well, if I don't keep those tight, then it will exacerbate everything that I saw leading up to it. So it reflexively, usually like it works 60% of the time, every time type of thing. This will help people find their lats, find their core, so their trunk is better on. If they're able to get lower when we add the stability, when we add the band tension, then we make an assumption that they had a stability deficit and that what they need is more stability to the trunk. And for us, like the trunk or the pillar, as we call it, is hips to shoulders and everything in between, that they need more stability in the pillar, in their warm-up, to get this all juiced up to make their deadlift better, okay? If it doesn't get better, so if we add that stability and they're still flexing early, then we label it a mobility problem. We don't use the term problem with them. We just go, okay, cool, now I know what I need to do with my warm-ups and my exercise selection. It's gonna be more flexibility-based training. The other one, they get more stability-based stuff, okay? After we do that assessment, then we're going to do a modified hinge test. So everything we've done to this point is a pure hinge. We get one small amount of knee flexion. A modified hinge means that we could have this initial knee bend, but then a second knee bend. This allows people to get lower than they would if they're doing a pure hinge, is what we'll label it, okay? The other way you can modify is take my feet wider, right? So people will modify their hinge setup with a wider stance or a secondary knee bend, allowing them to get lower into a deadlift. Great, that's a thing that we want to do. So we test their modified hinge because we want to be able to eventually pick things up from as low to the floor as we possibly can, because that is a life skill that's important. And it is important for strengthening the entire backside, including the lower back, to pick things up in a vertical way from a deadlift, okay? So we do those assessments and we say, now we know that this person that was having a hard time hinging to begin with either needs stability or mobility, and we have a better idea of what setup they should be in to get the deepest amount. Now, when we're looking at those modified hinge positions, it's gonna be somewhere between a squat and a hinge, right? We don't necessarily need to only train squats, which is hips up and down. Okay, let's oversimplify. Hips up and down, knees forward, and hinge, which is hips forward and back, knees staying vertical for the shin. When we are looking at this squat to hinge movement spectrum, our exercises